Morning, guys. Like I said on Wednesday, the two lessons this week, the first one was around James Simpson and obviously his discovery of the first anaesthetic to be used in the UK, which was chloroform. If you can remember a little bit about his discovery, it was in Edinburgh, and it was a little bit by accident. They'd been experimenting, but they kind of fell asleep at a party, didn't they? And they were able to see the effects that chloroform as an anaesthetic could have. So Simpson obviously was quite significant in this as being a form of pain relief. And there were lots of things used before the anaesthetics, which you can remember from the course, including biting down on a stick, as we said, when Pare was performing surgery. But today, as you can see from the key learning question, we're moving to look at someone else who worked around the similar time, just a little bit later, about the same time as Pasteur, to try and find the first antiseptic. So anaesthetic is pain relief. Antiseptic, obviously, is to try and prevent infection, okay, and try and clean wounds before operations and during operations, because we know even after this, during World War One, again, that more people died of infection and disease than they did of actually being shot at. So the silent starter today is just a really quick recap of last lesson. So just pause and have a go at those 8 questions there. Again, it doesn't matter whether you do all 8 or not. You can try. I've just said as long as you have a go at least 2 of them. But press pause and have a go at them now. Okay. As you can see, the first question we already had spoken about. Simpson obviously was a scientist at the University of Edinburgh, specialising in midwifery and care for ladies who are having children. What was nitric oxide? Well, that was laughing gas, okay, which was also used as a way of pain relief in the early days, as well as ether, which was 100% alcohol. And again, when we get to chloroform, we'll see ether combined with hydrochloric acid actually gave chloroform. What did Simpson discover? Well, he discovered chloroform, which was the first anaesthetic. And there were people afraid of using it, number 5, because, like anything, they were reluctant to change. And as we said before, they didn't know whether they were going to get the dosage right. They didn't know whether they should trust Simpson, so they were fairly afraid of using this. But it was Queen Victoria who used it in childbirth for a 7th or 8th child in 1853. And I think with her using it, obviously it carries a bit of clout and people listen. It works, and she was singing its praises. It was usually administered in the early days just through soaking a cloth and putting it over the face. So that's how it was administered in the early days. How would this discovery help surgeons perform operations? Well, obviously, it's a pain relief. So what it would do is it would prevent surgeons from having to stop operations due to people screaming in pain or whatever, and it would allow them to perform longer operations and more detailed operations. The disadvantages obviously were that they didn't know how much to give them, and again, there could be too much blood loss because they're not taking that into account. They haven't got all the technology we would have today. Okay, so that's a really quick recap of last lesson. Today we're looking at Lister. I just want to start off by sharing this video with you, so hopefully the sound is clear.
First up, let's go over to the surgery and meet the esteemed military medicine man, Dr. Duckworth, who's joined by young maverick, Dr. Joseph Lister. Dr. Lister has been rocking some boats in the medical world by insisting that his surgeons wash their hands. Now, let's see how they can help you at home.
Hello, and welcome to our new feature, Ask the Doctor, in which my colleague, Dr. Duckworth,
Hello.
and I, Joseph Lister, will attempt to answer all your medical quirks and queries. So, Duckworth, old fellow, what's top of the pile?
good rusty old, trusty old saw, like this one. That'll do the job. We'll have you hobbling about or dead in no time. And you could try a dose of blue pill and black dog juice without any trouble.
Dear Doctor, yesterday I suffered from pains in my body which overnight spread with alarming rapidity to the right-hand side. Right off my food and without being indelicate, I'm suffering a certain congestion of the bowels. Any thoughts?
Now, you're in luck. My specialist subject. What you're suffering from is appendicitis. And I'm not going to tell you anything serious because it's a real killer. Here's the pill. Get yourself some of these leeches and pop them on the skin as soon as you can so that they can get to work like this. Come on, this stuff. It's got leeches. Don't worry. Ask a friend to bleach you. Just a bit. Your local barber.
What I advise is immediate surgery. If it's left unattended, there's a very real chance the offenders will burst. Cleanliness of the implements is very important, as is cleanliness of the surgeon's clothes and his clean hands.
You could try a dose of blue pill and black tar.
No, don't do that. Get yourself a surgeon's pressure.
Lister, will you bring a form of medication?
Well, I wouldn't allow one of those in my operating theatre.
What's wrong with it, man? I've got memories. Full of memories. Go from head to toe.
Well, that's exactly the problem. When you last wash it?
Wash it? That'd be unlucky. Look, see here. Captain Jennings. See? Had his arm off at the elbow after an altercation with a cannonball during the mutiny. And up here, the late Lord Wilmore. Running with a stag. Yeah, beg your pardon. That was your lunch yesterday. Jolly good gravy, too.
Disgusting. It's massively unhygienic.
Yes. Good surgical stick. See, keeps the diseases away.
Dear Doctor, my 7-year-old son, James,
Smallpox. Dangerous thing, smallpox. I once knew a man caught it just from looking at someone.
no, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. No, he did. Yes, he did. It was his brother. He'd been nursing him for days and days, and then one day he looked at him and thought I'd been a bit queer myself. Next thing you know, he was dead within a week. So, moving on. Dear docs, I've been eating salted beef and biscuits for the past 3 weeks, and am now feeling exceedingly dicey and rather blocked up. What would you prescribe? Tricky one, this. Hey, Lister?
Blue pill and black dog.
Okay, as you can see there was a big difference between the two doctors. There was Lister and there was kind of an old-fashioned doctor. And this, for me, shows you what he and other scientists were up against at the time when they were trying to bring in new ideas. Now, obviously, Lister's experimenting with something called carbolic acid. Now, carbolic acid is a spray which its attempt is to reduce infection during surgery. And actually, whilst experimenting with it, mortality and death rates did fall from 46% in around 1867 to 15% in 1870. So it shows that it's working, and he's very obviously passionate about cleanliness, hygiene, washing hands, and this was a bit of a breakthrough. I know it sounds like common sense today, but it helped, and Lister's methods weren't accepted by everyone, but they were saying quite a lot of things in opposition to it, like the carbolic spray slowed operations, operating conditions were unpleasant because of the smell of the carbolic spray and how much you were using, and some doctors weren't as careful as Lister. Lister used it very, very carefully, and he sterilised his room, sterilised all of his implements that he was using, and that's how it worked. And eventually he had a machine developed that allowed him to use the spray in the operating room of carbolic acid and reduce infection. And he slowly trained up some British surgeons in London to use it, and eventually started to try and use it in internal stitches as well to prevent infection. So the activity on the board is quite an easy one. You'll see the black period of surgery is the one in the middle, and then the slight difference between aseptic surgery and antiseptic surgery. And we already know what antiseptic is, because we know it's about carbolic acid, using that to kill germs. Aseptic is similar in a way, but it's more about cleaning and sterilising equipment. Now, Lister believed in both. He believed in cleaning to prevent the germs coming in, and he also believed in using carbolic acid to actually kill the germs. Okay, I thought I'd share this with you because I think this, just as a little source, helps you understand the impact of his work with antiseptics. So just spend a couple of minutes having a look at it. Press pause and just jot down what you think the source suggests about changes in surgery. Okay, it doesn't need to be a full exam answer. Just write a couple of sentences using the data and evidence there to tell me what it suggests about surgery changes. Okay, hopefully you press pause and had a go at that. The obvious thing here is you've got the number of amputations and the number of deaths from it. So the percentage of those that have died with antiseptic is significantly lower, and it shows the impact on this development in surgery, and it's a significant impact because less people are dying during amputations due to the fact that Lister's preventing infection through using carbolic acid, okay, as an antiseptic. Today we have loads of antiseptic wipes and things, don't we? All of the antiseptic hand washing things we're using today due to what we're going through and preventing infections from spreading. So this is the start of it. Lister is the start. Okay, we're not going to do this activity, but what I'll do is I'll talk you through what we were going to read through. And you can see some of the images there. The image on the left, just here, if you can see it, is his attempt at creating a kind of a mechanical machine that automatically sprays his operating room with carbolic acid. So he'd just pull that lever down there, and it would spray. This here, you can still see there are lots of people involved in surgery just there, but you can see just there that's where the carbolic acid is. So when they're performing things, not only would they want to be using chloroform to, over the face to prevent any pain, but also where they would use that spray near the area, the wound, or whatever they're doing in terms of the operation, but also any of the equipment that they're sterilising as well. What I was going to do, just go back, is also just tell you a little bit, which we will do in a minute, on why people opposed him. But I'm hoping you understand at the moment the basics behind what he's doing. He's working in a team, and he develops this antiseptic, so less people are dying of disease and infection. This one I took from an exam paper, actually. I just thought rather than you doing the question, we could have a discussion about it. But what does the source tell us about the attitudes towards antiseptics? And this is the point I'm trying to make. Still, people are a little bit reluctant to change. Let's just have a little read of it together. So everything was soaked in carbolic, including hands, instruments and patient's skin. The whole area of the operation was covered in carbolic spray, which got into every part of the wound. Even our faces and coat sleeves often dripped with it, and it was a relief to all of us when the spray was abandoned. It was costly and cumbersome and often broke down. Carbolic acid made sad work with our hands, which were always rough and cracked. That's the kind of doctor Lister was up against. That's the kind of perception that Lister was up against when he was trying to reduce infection rates. So if this question came up about what does the source tell us about attitudes towards antiseptics, well, you'd carefully just use parts of the source which suggest people were reluctant to accept it and didn't like antiseptics. So you could use that bottom sentence there, couldn't you? The fact that they didn't like what it did to their hands. You could use the word relief and make a point on relief to say it's a relief when it's abandoned, that sentence there. You could also maybe make something of the fact that everything was covered in it and it was dripping with it, and it was a hindrance rather than a help. Okay, these reasons you're going to have a look at in a minute are reasons for opposition. I wonder if you could just pause for a second now, just jot down those 3 bullet points there, so you can try and categorise what kind of reason that these points link to. So opposition based on science, opposition based on practical problems, or actually his personality himself and why people didn't like him. And if you've paused it, you can then see just now, if I get the boxes up, the actual boxes, so you can take a look at the reasons why people were against it. Let's take a look at this. So, some doctors didn't accept the idea that microbes caused infection because microbes could not be seen without a microscope. And again, it's just deciding whether that is to do with science, practical problems, or Lister's personality, and so on and so forth. So if you work through those, you can see, for example, that the equipment was expensive. It's there twice. It should be only there once. That's obviously a practical problem, that they can't afford that. This one here, about Lister keeps changing his methods, is more about his personality. The first one, obviously, is a mixture of maybe science and technology. Okay, and this, again, being extreme, the fact that they're putting carbolic acid around is a bit more about practicalities. So just pause and have a go at that, just shading the corner with the colour, create a little key for yourself. Or if you're unable to print this out, just do it yourself. No need to write it all down. And just have a bit of time to think about all of these reasons why people were reluctant to accept him. The next step, what we would have done in the lesson, is we would have then used your understanding and your little grids in front of you to have a go at answering a type of question that could come up around the features of opposition. And really, those of you that are looking for the high marks, all you've got to do is develop your explanation. So you've just got to pick out two or three key points from the boxes there and just explain why they are showing opposition. So you might do a mini paragraph on each of the three areas. So one on his personality with one a bit of evidence explained, one on practicalities with a little bit of evidence explained, and then one on science with a little bit of evidence explained. Obviously, feel free to have a go at that, and if it's sent through to me, I'll mark it, but there's no need to for now. I think the key thing for me is that you're still learning and you're making sure you understand who Lister is and what carbolic acid is and why it's such a breakthrough, but also why people opposed him. I think this is definitely probably worth a watch just before we sign off. This, I think, sums up the two individuals, Lister and Simpson, that we've been covering this week. So I'm just going to ping it up on here so we can watch it. Just bear with me. I really like these. I know you've seen these before, but this one's particularly good.
Medicine through time. Simpson and Lister. Two of the biggest baddies of the medical world have always been pain and infection, and they really took a kick in the 19th century. Two men, James Simpson and Joseph Lister, led the charge against these ancient foes. First up, pain. It's not that pain relief didn't exist before the 19th century, it's just it had never really been effective. Anesthetics did exist in herbal forms, but dosages were hard to control, and surgery had to be performed quickly due to high pain levels. Ouch! There was also nitrous oxide, aka laughing gas, which had been used since the 18th century. And ether, which was discovered in 1842. Not only did ether cause vomiting, it was also highly flammable, not ideal when performing surgery by fire. It was no laughing matter. Now, enter the arch-nemesis of pain, Professor James Simpson. In 1847, Simpson was the first person to demonstrate the anesthetic properties of chloroform, which was much more effective than anything that had come before. How did he do it? Well, the story goes that during one of his many chemical experiments, he knocked over a jar of the stuff. It was later found in a deep sleep next to the jar, like a giant heavy baby. The church, still trying to meddle in medical thinking, opposed Simpson's whole approach to anaesthetic, believing that, for example, pain in childbirth was a punishment from God meted out to sinful women. Joy. But there were some more rational arguments against chloroform. It could be dangerous, and once killed a 15-year-old girl called Hannah Greener, who died during a toenail operation. But much-loved Queen Vicky went on to endorse it, and so normalised its use as an anaesthetic. She used it during the birth of her 8th and youngest child, Prince Leopold, in 1850, describing it as soothing, quieting, and delightful beyond measure.
Next up, that other baddie of the medicine world, infection. Despite the advancements in pain relief, there was still a huge problem with people's wounds getting infected. After all, feeling numb to pain was all very well and good, but if your leg got badly infected, it'd probably need amputating. Cold comfort, I'd say. Enter Joseph Lister, who made one of the most significant advances in the history of medicine when he invented antiseptic surgery. Building on Louis Pasteur's germ theory, which hypothesized that infection was caused by microbes getting into broken skin, Lister recommended that doctors use carbolic acid as a chemical barrier against those evil microbes by rubbing it onto their hands and soaking surgery equipment and wounds in it.
All clean.
Lister experimented on an 11-year-old boy called Jamie Greenlees, who'd had his leg run over by a cart. The normal treatment would have been amputation. Nice. But instead, Lister wrapped the leg with bandages soaked in carbolic acid. It worked! And the boy's wound did not get infected. And proved Lister's carbolic acid chemical barrier idea had legs too. Results! Despite its success, germ theory had its critics, of course. A chap called John Bennett argued that infection was caused by cell death. While another chap called Charlton Bastian argued that infection just spontaneously generated. Come on, guys, wake up and smell the chloroform. Though his antiseptic would prove revolutionary, Lister himself did not fully understand microbes. He thought there was only one type of microbe, and he even still wore his normal clothes while performing surgery. He was also a shy fellow who struggled with public speaking, so not best placed to silence his loudmouth critics. But ultimately, the results of Lister's theory spoke for themselves, as infection rates in surgery dropped from 50% to 15% in just 4 years, earning him the biggest "I told you so" in history. Thanks to Lister and his antiseptic discovery, surgeons started scrubbing their hands and arms, wearing surgical gowns and gloves, and using sterilised equipment. This developed into the scrupulously clean aseptic surgery we still enjoy today, which advocates keeping germs out of the operating theatre entirely. So let's give a pat on the back to Simpson and Lister, who were hugely influential in moving medicine towards the effective, squeaky clean status it enjoys today.
Okay, I always find those interesting. I think BBC Teach have done those in connection with the exam boards, and I do like to try and vary it and give you as many kind of videos and things to stimulate rather than just you sitting there reading and doing things that way. I'm conscious as well that I know you haven't had as much exam practice while you've been off, but that's for me to worry about, because the key thing is that you just keep learning, guys, and you keep just ticking over. And most of you have either got the handout I gave you before we shut, or you've got your white revision guide. And there's nothing to say that if you're bored of medicine, because we're kind of nearly through medicine. We've got to look at the 20th century, and then we're nearly through. But there's nothing to say you can't go back and look at Vietnam and Korea, or you can't go back and look at America from when you learnt that if you're in year 9 earlier on, or the year 10s when you were with Mr. Seller last year. So keep going. In terms of your work, I am having a look at all of it. I know some of you have sent me through some exam questions from year 10 which I gave you feedback on. Just keep sending me stuff through and uploading stuff on Show Me Homework. Even if you are forgetting to upload pictures of your work, or like some of you just say, "Sir, I haven't made any notes, but I've watched your video, it was really helpful." Fine, absolutely fine. Just send me a message on YouTube or on Show Me Homework with a little smiley face saying, "Thanks, sir, I watched it." Or just so that I know, because the next stage is with year 10 certainly, and phasing you back into school at certain times. We need to talk to all of you individually and work out how you are. And I think that's going to be, as a school, our next step, is to have a chat with all of you individually, see how you're all doing, how you're getting on, and then slowly work out where you need help and stuff, and slowly, hopefully, get back to some certain sense of normality. But I think it's a bit of a way off. And please don't worry, because I'm in constant contact with the exam boards and so on and so forth, and I know that actually we're at an advantage compared to other schools, because we start GCSE in year 9. So there are a lot of schools, if they're in year 10, for example, and they've only done one unit so far, and this is our third unit. I know we've got to revise America from when you learnt with Mr. Sellers, and we've still got to do Elizabeth, but I think it's going to be okay for you. I think either the grade boundaries will go down significantly, or there'll be a different way that you're going to be examined. But the key thing is to keep learning, and it's hard when you're not in a lesson because you lose the habits. But hopefully the videos help a little bit. Okay, guys, take care. Please email me or show homework, or through YouTube, just message me, say you've seen it, say thanks, whatever, and I'll be in touch. Okay, take care. Bye.